the Freehold Regional High School District Board of Education reorganization meeting. My name is Sean Boyce. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Business, Board Secretary, and at the moment the President Pro Tem, until such time the Board elects the President for the year ahead of us. First order of business is to report out the results of elections from November 3rd, 2020. For Colts Neck Township Representative, Deborah Finelli had 20,195 votes. There was also 43 write-ins. Freehold Township Representative, Elizabeth Higley had 18,411 votes. There were also 51 write-ins. And for Marlborough Township Representative, Michael Messinger had 11,226 votes. George Cometti had 8,798 votes, and there were also 12 write-in votes. So we have our three newly elected board members here with us. I'd like to invite you up individually to the podium, where you will raise your right hand. Your office is on the podium here. Recite the oath of office, and then take your seat at the Board of Education. So, Ms. Elizabeth Higley, please join us.
I, Elizabeth Higley, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and to the governments established in the United States and this state, under the authority of the people, so help me God. I, Elizabeth Higley, do solemnly swear that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law for the office of a member of a Board of Education, that I am not disqualified as a voter pursuant to RS 19-4-1, nor disqualified due to conviction of a crime or offense listed in NJSA 18A-12-1, and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of that office according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Thank you, Ms. Higley. Ms. Finelli?
I, Deborah Finelli, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and this state under the authority of the people, so help me God. I, Deborah Finelli, do solemnly swear that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law for the office of member of a Board of Education, and that I am not disqualified as a voter pursuant to RS 19-4-1, nor disqualified due to conviction of a crime or offense listed in NJSA 18A-12-1, and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of that office according to the best of my ability. So help me God.
Thank you, Ms. Finelli. And now, Mr. Messinger.
I, Michael Messinger, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and this state under the authority of the people, so help me God. I, Michael Messinger, do solemnly swear that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law for the office of member of a Board of Education, and that I am not disqualified as a voter pursuant to RS 19-4-1, nor disqualified due to conviction of a crime or offense listed in NJSA 18A-12-1, and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of that office according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Thank you, board. To the new board members, the returning board members, and also our new board member, Ms. Nelly, welcome to the board. First order of business for me is to take a roll call of the newly constituted board. So, Mr. Bruno.
Yes.
Ms. Capiello.
Here.
Ms. Spinelli.
Here.
Mrs. Hagley.
Here.
Mr. Lavin.
Yes.
Mr. Messinger.
Here.
Mr. Moses. Mr. Parisi.
Here.
Mr. Weiss. Okay.
Just ask Mr. Toscano and Mr. Weiss and
Mr. Weiss is on the line, yes.
And Mr. Moses?
Mr. Moses is getting on the line, he's not here yet.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda is the election of president of the Board of Education. So here's how this works, board. I will open the floor for nominations. A second is not needed. Anybody can nominate any other member of the board. Once it's apparent that there are no further nominations, I will ask for a motion to close the nominations. And if there is only one board member nominated for the office of president, then I will ask for a motion and a second to close nominations and to instruct the board secretary to cast a single unanimous vote for that nominee for president of the board of ed. At that point, the president will take control of the meeting and do the same for vice president. And after that, I'll ask for a motion and we'll adjourn into executive session. Okay. Everybody good on that? Okay. So at this time, I would like to open nominations for the office of president of the Board of Education.
I'd like to nominate Pete Bruno.
Not seeing any further nominations, I would ask for a motion to close the nominations and instruct the board secretary to pass a unanimous vote for Mr. Bruno for president of the Board of Education. May I have a motion? Mrs. Lavin?
Yes.
A second?
Second.
Ms. Capiello? Okay, so roll call vote. Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Ms. Capiello?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Higley?
Yes.
Mrs. Lavin?
Yes.
Mr. Messinger?
Yes.
Mr. Moses?
Not yet.
Mr. Parisi?
Yes.
Mr. Weiss?
Mr. Weiss.
Absolutely, yeah.
There you have it. Very good. Congratulations, Mr. Bruno.
I'd like now to open nominations for Vice President of the Freehold Regional Board of Education. Any nominations?
I nominate Mr. Parisi.
Anybody else? And close that nomination.
The motion will be to close nomination and ask the board secretary, instruct the board secretary to cast a unanimous vote in favor of Mr. Parisi for the office of Vice President of the Board of Education. Need a motion?
Motion. Second.
I can't see you saying that. So, okay. Diana, okay. And second was Ms. Higley.
Yes.
Okay, by roll call vote, Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mrs. Capiello?
Yes.
Mrs. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Higley?
Yes.
Mrs. Lavin?
Yes.
Mr. Messinger?
Yes.
Mr. Moses?
Not yet.
Mr. Parisi?
Yes.
Mr. Weiss?
Absolutely, yeah.
Great. Okay. So now I'd like to ask for a motion and a second to adjourn into executive session.
Motion.
Second.
Please rise for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This Board of Education meeting has been duly advertised in the Asbury Park Press and advertised in the districts and the regional boroughs of our Freehold Regional Study District. Mrs. Scano, you can do the ethics training?
Yes, Mr. President. Before I do it real quick, there was just one additional item to add to the executive session resolution that was noted on the agenda that was printed prior to the meeting. Specifically, box number 7, there was a discussion relating to the magnet program entrance exams.
Thank you.
Bear with me 1 second. All right. Good evening, everybody. As required, each year, the Board of Education has to have a conversation about the School Ethics Act. It's something that is required both statutorily and is required in terms of QSAC for scoring purposes. At everybody's seat, you will find 2 packets that I left for you. The first is a clipped packet. Top sheet says acknowledgement of receipt, code of ethics for school board members. If you would please just take the top sheet off, sign it, and return it to Sean, just acknowledging that you have received a copy of the School Ethics Act. This is something that we have to keep on file in the board office. The packet has 3 attachments. The first is a handout. We were in the central office. We have the PowerPoint presentation on the wall. I'll walk you through the slides. Behind tab 2 is the actual code of ethics. And behind tab 3 is the School Ethics Act itself, in case you needed the entire context. What I'm going to do tonight for you, because we do have a lot of folks that have returned, I'm going to just give a quick overview of recent updates that have come out in the last year. So if you would turn to tab 2, tab 1, you see the PowerPoint presentation slides. I'm not going to read them all to you. I'll hit some highlights. Starting on page 2, just very quick overview. The Board of Education is the entity that governs the school. We do not administer the schools. We do not run the schools. The authority of the Board of Education is limited to when we are all in session and when we are all together. And therefore, we can only act when we are together. There's 10 provisions of the Code of Ethics. I'm not going to read each one. You have, on each slide, you will have the actual text of the act itself, as well as evidence of what the School Ethics Commission, which is the branch of the Department of Education that has to hear all potential ethics complaints. You see there what the evidence of a violation would be. So the first one I just call the Uphold all rules. Basically, that you have to enforce and follow the laws of the state of New Jersey and of the United States as they are applicable to school districts. On page 3, after each provision of the School Ethics Act, I give you a summary of some cases, how board members either violated that provision or were exonerated where maybe folks tried to file an ethics charge. So for example, one instance where a board member violated a provision of the School Ethics Act, they tried to issue a rice notice themselves against an employee. That is not permitted by law. A rice notice, which is a notice that's given to employees that issues surrounding their employment will be discussed at a board meeting, are only issued by the superintendent's office. The board itself cannot issue rice notices. So these are kind of, some of them are kind of silly, but they always are good to illustrate the point. The second is that you are here for the educational welfare of all students, and that you will see that the schools meet their individual needs regardless of their ability, race, creed, sex, and social standing. turn over to the next page, you know, we've seen an influx within the last year of complaints from members against members of the public against board members, not here in Freehold Regional, but claiming that board members are not here, not on the Board of Education for the educational welfare. So you see in the first case example, a former teacher felt that a board member took action to have them non-renewed because the board member's child was in their class. That was thrown out. That did not impart. In another case this year, a board vice president made a public statement at a meeting that was virtual and that went into homes, pushing back on members of the community that did not like some of the board's actions, particularly as it related to going virtual in the spring. Again, there was nothing wrong with a board member saying something that maybe the community doesn't agree with, and just because you don't agree with it doesn't mean it's not in the best educational interests of a student. The third provision is you'll see there's a series of them. Board members' conduct is limited to policy, planning, and appraisal. Those are the three biggies. As I said at the outset, the Board of Education does not administer the school, but the board engages in policy, planning, and appraisal. Here you start evidence of violations or where board members take action, whether it be talking to individual employees outside of the presence of the superintendent or giving directives to employees. That's generally where you see board members overreaching. The next provision is no micromanaging of the schools. Again, you kind of see the two hand in hand. Board members are limited to policy, planning, and appraisal. The next one is you carry out your responsibility not to administer the schools, but to see that they are well run. You know, again, you see where board members have run afoul of this. They're giving direct instructions to staff. That is not to be done. That's not a board member's role. If you have a request, it goes to Dr. Samson. If it's finance related, it goes through Mr. Boyce's office. Number 5, no personal promises or private action. Okay, the board members must recognize, this is on page 7, that authority rests with the Board of Education and not to make private promises or take any action that can compromise the board. Again, you find violations here where board members go beyond that policy, planning, and appraisal role and take affirmative steps. For instance, a case that came out last year but is very illustrative. You had a board member who was pulled over for a traffic stop, was not happy that they were pulled over, proceeded to berate the officer that pulled them over, identified herself, don't you know I'm a board member, when was asked for her license and registration, proceeded to unleash a tirade of profanities. The officer indicated that she knew the chief of police, indicated that she knew a council person, and then when the officer issued the ticket and the board member realized they were not getting out of the ticket, then proceeded to scream some racial epithets at the officer and referencing the chief of police as well. All this caught on body camera footage. Again, that's action that compromises the board. Why? Because the board member tried to leverage their position as a board member to try to exert some undue influence. Number 6, I will refuse to surrender my independent judgment to special interests or use the schools for personal gain or the gain of friends. Generally, here you see violations where board members take actions that they are otherwise conflicted from, and we'll get to what that means by conflicted and how we determine who is conflicted and whether you have to abstain from a particular item or a vote. Number 7, I apologize. It's, I will hold all matters confidential. This is a big one lately, especially in the current environment of email, text messages, social media posts. There have been 2 cases within the last year and a half really dealing with this. The first is, keep in mind that as board members, you will be privy to information that is confidential and that is not for public consumption. You will receive information relating to staff. You'll receive information relating to litigation. You will receive information relating to students. That is not to be shared. It is not to be reposted, forwarded, retweeted, what have you. What we discuss in executive session or what is shared with you confidentially by the superintendent must maintain confidentiality. Case in point, there was a board member who received an email from a superintendent relating to a high-profile discipline incident that happened at another high school. Again, this is not Freehold Regional. But the board member then turned around and forwarded the information relating to what had happened at the high school, including the name of the student, the discipline that was imposed, and exactly what the student's disability was. The board member, by forwarding that out, then had their family member, who they forwarded it to, repost it on social media. So obviously a whole host of confidential information got out. And that board member was censured, which is, there's 3 levels of penalty. The first level is a reprimand. The second level is a censure. The third is removal. So the Ethics Commission does take these very seriously. Number 8, I will vote to appoint the best qualified personnel after consideration of the recommendation of the superintendent. The Board of Education cannot hire, cannot fire on its own. The Board of Education enjoys a symbiotic relationship with the superintendent. It is the superintendent's legal job to recommend to the Board of Education, and then the Board of Education takes action to either adopt or agree with those recommendations or to reject them. Just want to try to keep that in mind. Number 9, I will support school personnel in the proper performance of their duties. Here you kind of see these where board members have conversations either at a public meeting, blasting an employee, or taking issue with an employee in public, or not supporting the superintendent or the business administrator. The superintendent and business administrator are both employees, and the board is obligated under the School Ethics Act to support them in the proper performance of their duties. Oh, I apologize, the next slide is upside down. Number 10, I will refer all complaints to the superintendent. Okay, someone approaches you in the food store, at Target, back when we can start going to these stores again. When you're out and about in the community, they may come to you and say, hey, you're on the Board of Education, I need you to take care of something for me, or I need you to talk to that principal for me. Anytime somebody comes to you with a complaint, you are obligated under the School Ethics Act to refer either the issue itself to Dr. Samson, or to refer the person in the community to reach out and contact either Dr. Samson or the principal of the building if it's something school specific related. Board members, we are not if you look on our website, we have a very good explanation in terms of public comment and the role of the board at a public meeting. Mr. Asatola a couple of years ago had pushed for us to develop that and have it out on the website so that folks would know the Board of Education is not the first stop for problems. It should be the last stop. They should go through the proper channels, and that's really what that ethics provision provides. Okay, those are the 10 tenets of the School Ethics Act. Go to slide 15. Really, we're getting into conflict analysis, and what does that have to do with? That has to do with if you have someone that is related to you working in a public school district. Working within the Freehold Regional High School District itself, or a district, another public school district in the state of New Jersey. We have 3 categories of individuals as they're classified. We have what are called immediate family members, we have relatives, and then we have others. They are defined in the chart that is in your materials, and depending upon what the relationship is, there may be things that you are not permitted to participate in. I could just turn your attention to the other piece of paper that I left at everybody's sheet. Those of you that have been here before will recognize this is the conflict sheet that I give to each one of you. I have sat with each one of you. We've gone through it. If I haven't sat with you yet, we will sit soon, and we'll go through and find out if you have anybody that you are related to, and if there's anything that you should not participate in. I would ask all of the returning members to please review this and let me know if there's anything that has changed in terms of any family members that might have gotten a job in education, or any people that are no longer in education or no longer working in the district. So please just let me know, and I can update the chart, and I will disseminate an updated copy at the February meeting. Okay. Skipping through. One of the big things that we have seen in the last year or so is questions about staffing agencies, especially now with substitute shortages. There are various companies that provide substitutes. Here in Freehold Regional, we don't use staffing companies. The district has its own substitutes, so you can probably ignore those slides. Also, if you are a member of another union, okay, and really when we're looking at the School Ethics Act and what conflict it could play as to the business of the board, we're talking about membership in education-based unions, NJEA, NJPSA, the NEA. If you are a member of the AFL-CIO, or you're a member of the Teamsters, or CWA, or CWO, those generally will not have any impact on your role or your participation on the Board of Education. And that's what a recent ethics opinion did clarify for us. Slides 19, the two slides on page 19 deal with the doctrine of necessity. The doctrine of necessity, for whatever reason, has become a very hot topic lately in the state of New Jersey. There were at least 5 advisory opinions within the last 2 years dealing with the doctrine of necessity. And what do I mean by an advisory opinion? The School Ethics Commission, which I mentioned at the beginning, is the body that runs and oversees the School Ethics Act. They issue decisions in 2 ways. The first is a complaint is filed and they issue a decision. The second way is somebody writes to them for advice and they put out an advisory opinion. So for whatever reason, the doctrine of necessity has been a hot topic. All the doctrine of necessity is very, very simple. It happens when there are so many board members conflicted that the board itself cannot conduct business. We have not, I've been here since 2011, we have never had an instance we have gotten that close with a conflict or where people have to abstain that we've had to even consider in the invoking of the doctrine of necessity. But I gave you the slides and the decisions so that if you hear that term, you know exactly what it is. And then next to last is the interview process. There is a perception out there that board members should be involved in interviewing candidates, whether it is a building principal, assistant principal, a director of special education, or a director at any level, even a business administrator. The Ethics Commission has clarified, other than the role of the position of superintendent, which is the only position that the Board of Education itself hires, the board is not to have any role in the interview process. If board members are not allowed to sit in, they're not allowed to come and ask questions. The Ethics Commission has been very clear that absent the role of superintendent, they do not want board members having a role in the interview process or in selecting candidates. Lastly, volunteering. I'm happy to report that the Ethics Commission has continued its trend over the last couple of years to move away from the prohibition against board members volunteering in the schools. As crazy as it sounds, you are all here, you are elected volunteers. It's in your nature. You're volunteering your time to be here to serve on this body. It would make sense that you would also volunteer to participate in other aspects. The commission, for whatever reason, about 5 years ago, took a very hard line on volunteering and put very rigid controls in place where they didn't want board members volunteering at all. They have since walked that back in a systematic fashion, so now not all volunteering is impermissible. Rather, they look at the degree to which you have contact with kids, with staff, whether you are giving directions to students and to staff. If any of you have any questions about any volunteering activity that you would like to do in the district, number one, I know Dr. Samson encourages it. Number two, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help walk you through it and make sure that you stay above board. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the ethics discussion for this year. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, Mr. Moses.
Yes, I was just wondering what made them change their mind about board members volunteering in other aspects of the school day.
Mr. Moses' question was he wondered what changed. My guess is I think there was starting to be a lack of volunteers for career day, a lack of volunteers for PTO events, PTA events, educational foundations. I think they realized very quickly how misguided that hardline position on volunteering was. I think that's what happened.
Well, I thought they're...
My apologies. Okay. Seeing no other questions, Mr. President?
Questions?
I was going to ask you, does that include volunteering for athletic?
No, Mrs. Lavin's question was, does that include the prohibition on volunteer coaching for athletics? No, that is still a activity that the Ethics Commission feels is too involved. It's too much direct contact and too much indication to give directives to staff and students.
Any other questions? Good job, Mr. Scotto. So we have reorganization items. May I have a motion to approve item C1 through C6? Motion? Diane? I need a second.
A second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mrs. Cappiello?
Yes.
Mrs. Spinelli? Mrs. Higley?
Yes.
Mrs. Lavin?
Yes.
Mr. Messinger?
Yes.
Mr. Moses?
Actually, we're voting on C1 to C6, the reorganization.
Right, I said, yes.
Mr. Parisi?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Mr. Weiss?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
May I have a motion to approve the minutes of December 10th, 2020,
Minutes.
our regular meeting? Back in December?
Yes. Yes.
Motion?
Motion.
Yeah. I need a motion to approve C1 through C6.
Mr. President, we just did our
And then we have a motion for December 10th, our 2020 regular board meeting. If I have a motion?
Ms. Cappiello?
I'll second.
Mr. Parisi, second.
Roll call.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Yes, the minutes.
Mrs. Cappiello?
Yes.
Mrs. Spinelli? Mrs. Higley?
Abstain.
Mrs. Lavin?
Yes.
Mr. Messinger?
Yes.
Mr. Moses?
Mr. Moses?
Yes.
Mr. Parisi?
Yes.
Mr. Weiss?
Mr. Weiss?
Yeah. Yeah.
Got it.
Special note that our communications are left on file with the board secretary. There's no reports tonight. Now we have the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Bruno. Happy New Year to everyone. Congratulations to Ms. Spinelli. Congratulations, Ms. Higley. And congratulations, Mr. Mr. Messenger, and congratulations, Mr. Bruno, being elected president, and Mr. Priestley, vice president. So we are back in remote session presently. The plan for the Freehold Regional High School District, and this was something that obviously was put forth several weeks ago, was to extend the winter break by a week, and that was done in order to give the community time to ensure that we didn't have any community spread, that folks that might have gathered around the holidays, if anyone was symptomatic, with most of those symptoms becoming evident within 7 to 10 days. The district did that as a proactive measure, certainly, to just make sure that we were going to be able to open safely come Monday, January 11th. At this point in time, we are prepared to do that. We're ready to welcome our students back on January 11th into the hybrid model. And remember, our hybrid model has been a AABBB day. So that means students go either 2 or 3 days a week, consisting of 5 50-minute periods a day with an hour-long help session, basically. So what we've also done over the past couple of weeks is begin to bring a number of students back 5 days a week. So students who are participating in our specialized programs and our ELL students have been able to come in 5 days a week from the start of our hybrid model on October 19th. But what we're seeing now is a relatively sharp increase in the number of students electing for the full remote option. And so as a district where we stand presently, about 60% of our students are on the full remote option, while about 40% obviously are in the building. What that has allowed us to do, though, is to backfill spaces within the building with those students that benefit from 5 days a week. And so we've made that available to an increasing number of students, as obviously with the increase with the students remotely, there's space for these students without compromising our social distancing and our other safety measures that we feel strongly about within the school system. The long-term plan moving forward, at least over the next month or so, during the week of January 20th, the district will be surveying parents and asking all students and parents if they would be interested in attending school 5 days a week. Obviously, with 60% of our students fully remote, we feel that we want to know the numbers of those students who truly want to access school 5 days a week and or feel the need. Our building administrators are also identifying students that they think would be better served and reaching out to those parents and guardians. Once we survey on January 20th, the plan would be at the start of the third marking period, which is February 4th, we would ask students to either commit for the marking period to staying remote and or moving into the hybrid or the 5-day model. And so that survey is going to go out January 20th. We're going to return to the schools on January 11th. We feel good about where we are. We'll see how things play out over the next couple of weeks after we return. Obviously, the state of New Jersey from the COVID matrix is still in the orange, as is our region. So we want to make sure that we do this carefully. I want to thank the faculty and staff. I think part of the reason that the numbers for remote have increased so sharply is the district has done an excellent job of providing both remote and in-person instruction during this difficult time. Winter sports will also begin on January 11th, as will activities those activities that have to be done in person. So like our robotics teams, things of that nature will meet in person as well. And we're prepared to welcome our students back on January 11th. What schools are seeing across the state post-winter break is an increase in the number of students electing for the remote option. So we'll see where we stand. If that 60% increases any further, we will move forward with opportunities for more students to engage in 5 days a week. And we feel very confident and very comfortable with where we are as a district for our students. When we come upon the end of the third marking period, late March, early April, we're hoping for significant movement by that point in time. Obviously, the vaccine is rolling out. The district is partnered with Center State Hospital, who are working with us to hopefully vaccinate our faculty and staff over the next couple of weeks. We feel good about that, and we're thankful to Center State for their partnership. But we feel strongly that we're not going to lock into a plan for the rest of the year. We want to do it by the third marking period because we do understand that the situation can change at any given time. Obviously, the same constraints that existed prior to the winter break still exist. So Freehold Township, Freehold Borough, and Howell High School had moved into the winter break in full remote learning as a result of community spread. We will continue to follow the NJDOH guidelines on that. And so we're certainly not out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination with the potential for schools to close for 2-week periods moving forward. We anticipate that that might be a possibility, certainly, but we've sort of been there and done that and feel confident in how we can manage that moving forward. And so we'll be communicating with our parents and guardians the week of January 20th about those next steps. Came back from the winter break. We're staffed in our buildings. We feel good about our personnel and our ability to staff the buildings. Obviously, in New Jersey, it's been a bit of a change with the expiration of the FFCRA, which provided some financial leave for those who needed it, particularly for childcare issues and other districts closing and such. Feel confident that the district has worked through those parameters to be able to open up with a full staff come January 11th. And so that concludes my report, Mr. President.
Thank you. I just have one.
Can I?
Okay.
Actually, I have 2 questions for Dr. Samson. The first one is, what is the story with the county vocational schools? Do they have kids in the building, and if they do, is there bus transportation? Because obviously we're involved with the transportation, and I just haven't heard anything about it.
Yeah, so we're more than involved with the transportation. We provide the transportation.
Well, right.
So yes, they're open. I believe they went full remote as well right before the break for a couple-week period. I do believe they're opening back up, I think, the same day we are for in-person instruction,
Okay.
which is January 11th. But they've been up and running as well, and we've been providing that transportation.
Okay. I thought we might be getting free, but I guess not.
So on those time periods where they've gone full remote, obviously those are days that we do not have to provide transportation. Remember at the end of last year, some of the transportation contracts and what that looked like ended up in a bit of a negotiation in terms of how they were paid out. And so I know Mr. Boyce has worked closely with those transportation companies along the way here for what some of that financial impact might look like to the Freehold Regional High School District.
And then actually my other question was about guidance, because I was reading up, and the article I was reading was about the state of Connecticut, and it was focusing on all these kids out there, many of them going to be the first in their family to go to college, and how in the state of Connecticut the applications for financial aid were seriously down from a year ago, 2 years ago, because there's so many kids out there that don't have that in-person guidance experience with respect to, getting guidance for higher education. So would you be able to go over why this district, is not going to have kids in the same position as a district that's not providing in-person college counseling for kids? If the kids' parents aren't up to the task or don't know what to do, what are we doing to make sure no senior in this district is getting shortchanged on the college counseling part of the guidance department?
So Great question. So we're doing an awful lot, right? And so for us, I think first and foremost, what the public should understand is that any student that needs and/or requests in-person counseling in this environment is receiving it in this school district, first and foremost. We pulled off a number of events in the fall and have others planned for the spring. So our seniors have received one-to-one counseling about their planning process for college. Now, some students are electing to do that remotely, and that's their choice, but certainly that's available in the building. Our junior college planning meetings have occurred like they always do. We haven't changed anything along those lines. And our sophomores and freshmen will be doing the same thing in the spring about their aptitude and interest surveys and such that help guide the guidance planning process for them. We ran a number of virtual college tours and visits and such through the National Association of Counseling. Help me with that, Mr. Dillon, and acronym. But we had about 1,000 parents and students participate in that in the fall. We're planning a Freehold Regional High School District only virtual college fair on April 14th and 15th, where our kids will be able to have exposure to the hundreds of colleges and universities that they've always had here, that we've always hosted internally.
That open to everybody?
Absolutely. Our 11th grade planning presentation, college planning presentation, financial presentation went off this year like it always does. We feel good about that.
Dr. Samson, also, all the principals have communicated to 10th and 11th grade parents that we have the virtual SAT practice test that they can sign up for.
Yeah, I'm getting there.
Okay.
I'm getting there. So we ran the SAT, the ACT, the PSAT in person, like we've always done. And even when our schools were closed and were remote, we still ran those actual events in person for the students. And Dr. Hazel is making a great point. We've provided free practice SATs in conjunction with the College Board for any student that had interest or need. And so I think we've assisted our students on all the same parameters that we always have in order to plan for college and career.
It's funny, I ran into two Kyle High School seniors today. One's going to Tampa, stickers on her car. The other one's going to West Virginia, forensic scientist, which might be studying forensic science. Stickers on the car. So things are just, even with the pandemic, it's all just going. It's great. It's good. I have one question about the Google student. Everybody seems to like it. The school students, what have they done since June to improve?
Google Classroom?
Yes.
So nothing changed. Well, a lot changed since June. Everything changed and nothing changed, right? So we use that same platform. The platform hasn't changed. What has changed is we spent the entire summer building out a very structured model to deliver this instruction to students in real time, as if there's no break between what's happening home and in the classroom. And we, by necessity, were very asynchronous, right, out of time in the spring, and we've been very much within the regular traditional schedule, utilizing Google Classroom, and our teachers, to their credit, have all really become very proficient in that platform, and I think that has enabled a lot more real-time and constant communication with students, whether they're in the classroom or whether they're at home.
Thank you. Okay, moving along here, there are no board reports tonight, and there is no public participation because no one signed up.
And Mr. Bruno, just because this meeting was advertised also as a hybrid meeting, there is also no one that has phoned in on the link that is, and the phone number that is open for tonight's meeting.
Thank you. May I have a motion to take H1 through L2? I can't hear.
Couldn't hear.
Diane.
This is okay. Gabrielle?
Second.
Ms. Higley?
Discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mrs. Capiello?
Yes.
Mrs. Spinelli? Mrs. Hagley?
These are all eight, right?
H1 through L2.
Okay. I, yes, except that I abstain on H4 for Matthew Colson and H10 for Laura Kraszewski.
Mrs. Lavin?
Yes.
Mr. Messinger?
Yes.
Mr. Moses?
Mr. Moses?
Yes.
Mr. Parisi?
Yes.
Mr. Weiss?
Mr. Weiss?
Yes.
All motions passed.
Now we have our public hearing
Yes.
on the superintendent's contract.
Mr. President, with your permission, I'll give a quick summary. Okay.
I apologize. In 2011, Governor Christie took action to place maximums or caps on the salaries of New Jersey superintendents. Although the initial contract for Dr. Samson was negotiated and agreed prior to the announcement and imposition of the salary caps, the review and approval of Dr. Samson's initial contract was held up until the caps were put into place. As such, Dr. Samson's initial contract with the district back in 2011 was the first in the state where the salary caps were implemented. It was a 5-year agreement, and there was no provisions for any salary increases of any kind. In the spring of 2017, the Department of Education took action to amend or increase the salary caps for the first time, and actually did allow for boards of education to provide salary increases for superintendents of larger school districts, such as the Freehold Regional High School District. Then, in the summer of 2019, Governor Murphy signed legislation that effectively eliminated all the superintendent salary caps in the state and required only that salaries be comparable. However, prior to the elimination of the salary caps, the board and Dr. Samson sought and obtained approval to amend Dr. Samson's contract in order to provide for a one-time salary increase of $4,500 in recognition of an educational doctorate degree. As the board explained at the public hearing that was held in the summer of 2019, the salary increase was reflective of the exact same amount that the board provides to its principals and central office administrators upon their attainment and completion of a doctorate degree in education. Rather than take action to further amend the contract at that time, in light of the elimination of the superintendent's salary caps, the board and Dr. Samson decided to wait and see how the Department of Education would respond and what would be considered a comparable salary. In that regard, this past fall, the board conducted a comparability study of superintendent salaries that had been approved by the Department of Education since the elimination of the salary caps in the summer of 2019. In that study, the board focused on school districts that were comparable to the Freehold Regional High School District in size, demographics, and geography. That study concluded that Dr. Samson's salary was no longer comparable, and as such, the board and Dr. Samson entered into negotiations to develop a new employment contract. An agreement was reached as to the terms for the new employment contract, and the new contract has been approved by the Executive County Superintendent and found to be in compliance with the physical accountability regulations. Accordingly, as required by law, advertisements were run and notices were posted in advance, giving notice that this hearing would be held tonight and that the contract, the amended contract, would be voted on by the board this evening. The changes to Dr. Samson's current contract are as follows. 1, the new contract will extend Dr. Samson's contract for 1 additional year. It will be for 5 years in duration and will end on June 30th, 2025. 2, In terms of compensation, Dr. Samson will be receiving a prorated salary of $250,000 for the remainder of the current year. This will result in a total salary payment in the current year of $233,690. This is actually less than the total compensation that was provided for under Dr. Samson's existing contract if merit goals were achieved. The contract also provides for 2% raises in each year of the contract. This is less than what is provided for under current contract, under contracts for other groups within the Freehold Regional High School District. The various associations have contracts that receive annual increases ranging from 2% to a little bit more than 3%. Also, number three, the other change is a change in terms of vacation, not in terms of an increase in the number of days. Rather, the law of the state of New Jersey allows a Board of Education to grant employees that were not able to utilize vacation days because of a state of emergency or because of a public health emergency to roll over those days that would have otherwise statutorily expired. The board is extending this and granting this to Dr. Samson in light of his dedication and hard work during the spring and at the start of the school year, and as we are still in the public emergency, as it still continues. Finally, number 4, the contract is being revised to remove all options for merit pay. It basically will no longer be an option for Dr. Samson. In addition, the board is removing, and Dr. Samson's agreed to removing, language regarding the opening up of the contract should the salary caps be revised or repealed. In essence, this renegotiated contract is the fulfillment of that provision that used to be in the contract, meaning the board has taken action, and Dr. Samson has taken action since the repeal of the caps in the summer of 2019. So it's really kind of a one-shot. Those, Mr. President, is a summary of the changes. As you noted, there is no one present in the audience. In addition, I just checked and monitored. There's also nobody that has phoned into the number that was advertised for the meeting tonight.
If anybody wants to see the contract, it's public tomorrow?
Yes. And one second. Yes, the contract, Mr. Bruno, yes, once it is voted on, will be public, yes. Mr. Moses did have a question.
Yeah, sorry. Could you do me a favor? When I was the president of the board, and we brought Chuck into our district, and we had him sign a contract before the Governor Christie changed everything, do you have the number of what his contract was supposed to be?
I was actually not counsel for the board. Mr. Moses' question was, what was the negotiated salary that the board and Dr. Samson had agreed to prior to the imposition of the caps? I don't have that number. I wasn't counsel for the board at that time. I came about 3 months after all of that. Dr. Samson, do you remember?
The original number was somewhere in 2010. It was somewhere around 216 or thereabouts.
Yeah.
Ms. Lavin, you remember, she was there.
I was in a school library.
I think it was 216. That was in November and December of 2010.
And then Mr. Moses was just asking to clarify, that was the amount that was negotiated and agreed to in order for Dr. Samson to come to the district. And then Mr. Moses just asked me to reiterate for how many years was Dr. Samson not allowed to receive a salary increase at the capped amount of $175 that was put in place by the governor. I would say that was a good 4 years.
It was 4.
It was 4.
Okay. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. President?
Yes, sir. Okay, so now I have a motion to approve items C1 through C6.
No, just, Mr. President, just we're going to be approving item, I apologize, M1.
M1.
M1 and M2.
I would like to move to approve M1 and M2.
Second.
So Mr. Parisi and Ms. Lavin? First and second.
Can you just go over M1 and M2, what they are again?
Sorry.
Yes, thank you. I know what M2 is.
That's okay. The M1 is closing the public hearing that was just conducted.
Thank you.
And M2 is to adopt and approve the employment contract for Dr. Samson.
Thank you.
President,
Separate roll call for that, right?
Yes, it can be one roll call vote for both, yes.
You want to call the roll call?
Go, Mr. Boyce.
I will, after, any
Any discussion
on the motions?
Yeah, if I may, I had a few comments that I wanted to make. I was going to include them at the end of old new business, but it kind of marries into, discussion on Dr. Sampson's contract. So I'm just going to say everything that I have to say right now. And I'm going to conclude with some comments on the contract, Dr. Sampson. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, just on mic. Thank you.
Okay. All right. First, I want to congratulate Mr. Bruno on his appointment as our board president. I have full confidence that you will fulfill your responsibilities and be an exceptional spokesperson for our board. I want to congratulate Mr. Messinger on his re-election. I want to congratulate Ms. Stigley on her election to a full term. I want to congratulate Ms. Finelli for her election and welcome you to the board. I want to also acknowledge Mrs. Cappiello and thank her for her nomination of me as the vice president. I appreciate that. And I want to thank you for your leadership and fulfilling the late Mrs. Sutera's role as our board vice president. I want to thank the entire board for electing me unanimously as the vice president. Your faith in me means a lot to me, and I intend to serve honorably and to the best of my ability as the vice president of this board. It goes without saying that this past year has been incredibly turbulent waters with COVID-19. As I was saying to Mrs. Finelli, this is my first year on the board. I never would have imagined that 2 months after we met and I was sworn in, that we would have been facing an unprecedented pandemic like COVID-19. Schools would have shut down. We were literally making life and death decisions. It's been challenging. I feel that we have done an exceptional job of navigating through those challenging times, and I really appreciate all of the mentorship from my fellow board members through this difficult time. I do feel as though we are turning the corner, and that vaccines are coming around. We are now moving into really almost our second year of dealing with this, and I think that we're getting better. We're perfecting things, and we've been providing an exceptional education to our students in a remote setting. So much so that I think some of our students have chosen to stay home because the quality of education that they're receiving remotely is so great, and that should be acknowledged. In my first year on the board here, we struck a new 5-year deal with the FREA, and it was meant a lot to me to be part of that negotiation to bring that 5 years of labor stability to the district and to Dr. Samson. I think that it was a very fair deal, and I think that it's going to, like I said, bring stability for the coming years. And I'll conclude with this, that the contract that we are going to vote on tonight for Dr. Samson is a continuation of that stability in our district that will help us in the coming years. And I believe that bringing his compensation in line with his colleagues and other superintendents in our incomparable school districts is the the right and fair thing to do, and I will be voting to approve that. Dr. Samson, I look forward to your continued leadership of this district and working with you for the betterment of the Freehold Regional School community. And I appreciate everything that you do.
So, okay, so we can do motion on M1 and M2.
We actually have that, Mr. President. We're just ready for the roll call.
Mr. Bruno?
I have to abstain from M2.
Mrs. Cappiello?
Yes on M1 and I abstain on M2, but simply for the fact that I have to abstain. And I thank you, Dr. Samson, for everything that you do every day.
Mrs. Pinelli?
You can abstain, Deb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Comfortable.
That's it. I'm sorry. Mr. Knight, it's your, yeah, you can abstain.
Mrs. Higley?
Yes to M1 and I abstain from M2. Again, I want to thank Dr. Samson for all his hard work.
Mrs. Lavin?
Of course. Yes.
Mr. Messinger? Mr. Messinger? Yes. Mr. Moses?
Mr. Moses.
Absolutely yes.
Mr. Parisi?
Yes.
Mr. Weiss?
Mr. Weiss.
Emphatically yes.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. All business. I just have one statement to make. Nice words, Mark. Thank you for those kind words. Looking around here, we have a very strong board moving into 2021. And I think with our board, with its diverse backgrounds, we can conquer COVID, we can conquer S2, and whatever else comes our way. And with the central administration and this board, we're up for any challenges. So again, thank you for your support. I started here at Manalapan High School as an athletic director, SICA, and it was fitting tonight to become your president. And I really want great communications between us all, and that's kind of what I'm hoping for. Thank you. Any more old business? New business?
I have a couple of words, Mr. President, I just want to thank the board for their faith in me. When Kathy remembers the history well, and Heshy remembers, and then Michael came onto the board shortly thereafter, but it was when I was first offered the position here in the Freehold Regional High School District. It was in November of 2010. The contract was held up so long because they had imposed the salary cap after the fact and didn't build any provisions for it. We literally just couldn't even get the contract approved to be official. And I stuck it out until June. I couldn't start until June ultimately. And by the time I had started, Mr. Messinger had been elected, Ms. Tomazic had been elected, Mr. Asatola had been elected. So 3 board members that had nothing to do with the process of hiring me were newly elected board members as I was starting here. And those of you who've been here, you know that those first couple of years, what they were like. A really difficult tenure case and some other things that happened. And I just want to thank the board for absolutely always being incredibly supportive. I have it good here with the Board of Education. This board always does the right thing, is always supportive, always wants to make the place better, and always acts with integrity. So I appreciate that, and that's why I've been here for 10 years, and that's why I'm happy to stay. So thank you for your faith in me. It's deeply appreciated.
You are welcome. Anybody else? New business? Nobody? New business? So we're going to adjourn. I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Second?
Second.
So we're adjourned. I'll let you take it.
All in favor?
Yay!
Thank you, Adam. We're going to adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you.